My fiancé, Liam, and I were never the type to dream of a massive, extravagant wedding. We wanted something intimate, memorable, and unique. That's what led us to the Blackwood Manor. It was an old, sprawling estate from the late 1800s, about an hour outside the city, converted into a boutique hotel and event venue. It was gorgeous civic-covered stone walls, antique furniture, and acres of misty, forested grounds. The price was also suspiciously reasonable for a weekend booking. We just figured we'd gotten lucky. The wedding day itself was First, the ceremony was held in a garden behind the manor, under a massive, ancient oak tree. Everything felt magical, almost like we had stepped back in time. The weirdness started during the reception, inside the manor's grand ballroom. My new husband Liam came up to me, looking pale. He asked if I had seen the little girl. I hadn't. He said he saw a small girl in what looked like an old-fashioned, white dress, maybe 7 or 8 years old, peeking at him from behind a curtain at the far end of the hall. When he looked back, she was gone. He thought it was just one of the guests' kids, so he didn't think much of it. An hour later, my maid of honor, Sarah, pulled me aside. She was flustered. She said she was coming back from the restroom down a long hallway and all the framed portraits on the wall. Old black and white photos of the Blackwood family, who originally owned the manor, had been turned to face the wall. All of them, she swore they were normal when she walked past the first time. We went back together, and all the portraits were facing forward again, looking perfectly normal. At that point, I was getting a sick feeling in my stomach. The mood felt heavy. Later, as the party was winding down, we were gathering our things from the bridal suite upstairs. Liam's grandfather, a man who rarely speaks and is usually very stoic, was waiting for us in the hall. He looked shaken. He told us that while he was sitting in the lobby, he heard a child crying. He followed the sound to a small, locked door under the main staircase. He said the crying was coming from inside, and then he heard a little girl's voice whisper. He locked me in. When he called out to ask if anyone was in there, the crying just stopped. That was it for us. We just wanted to leave. We rushed everyone out of there, thanking them and making excuses about being tired. As Liam and I were driving away, I googled Blackwood Manor tragedy on my phone. My blood ran cold. An article from 1902 popped up. The youngest daughter of the Blackwood family, Elspeth Blackwood, vanished from the manor during her older sister's wedding reception. She was never found. The prime suspect was a groundskeeper who had been fired, a weak poorer man who had reportedly been obsessed with the family. They said he swore he'd ruin the celebration. The last place Elspeth was seen was playing near the grand staircase. The police searched the entire property for weeks, but it was like she just disappeared. They never found her body, and the groundskeeper was never charged. We were married at the exact spot a little girl was likely murdered, on the anniversary of another wedding. We never found out who or what turned the pictures, or what Liam's grandfather heard, but we know what Liam saw. It was the ghost of a little girl, forever trapped at the site of her own tragic end, still looking for a way out. Our wedding was a DIY affair from start to finish. My wife, Chloe, is incredibly artistic, and I work in construction, so we decided to build and craft most of our decorations ourselves, including a photo booth. It wasn't a booth so much as a decorated corner. We set up a nice backdrop, put out a bunch of fun props like hats and feather boas, and left a professional camera on a tripod. It had one of those remote clickers, so guests could just stand in front of the backdrop and snap their own pictures. It was a huge hit. For weeks after the wedding, we were still basking in the glow. We got all our professional photos back from the photographer, and they were beautiful. Finally, I decided to tackle the hundreds of photos from the DIY photo booth. I loaded the SD card into my computer and started clicking through them. It was exactly what you'd expect: my cousins making goofy faces, Chloe's aunts wearing silly hats, our friends crammed together in big group shots. It was pure joy. But as I got deeper into the photos, the timeline got later into the night. The crowd in the pictures thinned out. And then I saw him. One of the catering staff, a young guy I hadn't really noticed that night, started appearing in the photos. At first, he was just in the background, cleaning up glasses behind the smiling guests. Then, he was in a photo by himself, standing stiffly against the backdrop, not smiling, just staring at the camera. I thought it was weird, but figured he was just messing around. Then I saw another, and another. He wasn't using any props. He was just standing there, in the exact same pose, in between pictures of our friends and family. A few photos later, I saw one that made me feel uneasy. It was a picture of Chloe and her bridesmaids. They were all laughing, but in the deep background, you could just see his face in the reflection of a mirror on the wall. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was staring intently at Chloe. I kept clicking. The last photo of any of our guests was time-stamped at 10:47 p.m. After that, there were about 30 more pictures, all of him, in every single one. He was holding one of our props, but he was using them in disturbing ways. In one, he was holding the little chalkboard sign we had, but he'd written mine on it with an arrow pointing out of the frame. In another, he was wearing the groom's top hat and holding a prop knife to the throat of a cardboard cutout of a smiling, cartoon bride. The final photo was the worst. It was a blurry close-up of his face, too close to the lens. His eyes were wide, and his mouth was twisted into a grotesque, exaggerated smile. I could see the reflection of the empty room behind him in his eyes. He was the last one there. We called the catering company the next day. They said the man, his name was David, had been fired 2 days after our wedding. Apparently, another couple complained that he had tried to take a souvenir from their gift table. They wouldn't tell us more, but they confirmed he no longer worked for them. We never went to the police because, technically, what could we say? That a guy took weird pictures. But I can't shake the feeling of being watched. To this day, I can't look at our wedding photos without feeling a chill, wondering what he was thinking, and just how close he was to us all night. I married my high school sweetheart, Jenna, in our small hometown church. It was as traditional and wholesome as it gets. Everyone we knew and loved was there, including Jenna's grandmother, a sweet but intensely religious woman we'll call Mrs. Davison. She was a pillar of their family, but she had a tendency to see signs from God in everything. During the gift opening the next day at her parents' house, we came across a large, plainly wrapped box with no tag. We assumed it was from someone who forgot to sign the card. Inside was an antique wall clock. It was beautiful, made of dark, polished cherry wood with an ornate, hand-carved face. We loved it. Mrs. Davison was there, and when she saw it, she clasped her hands together and said it was a sign of our timeless love, a blessing for our new home. We thanked everyone, and even though no one claimed it, we took the clock home and gave it a place of honor on our living room wall. The clock didn't chime or make any noise. It just ticked. A quiet, steady, rhythmic tick that filled the silence of our new apartment. A week after the wedding, we had just gotten back from our honeymoon when we got a call. My best man, Mark, had been in a horrible car accident. A truck ran a red light. He was in the hospital, but he was going to be okay. We were rattled, but thankful it wasn't worse. As I hung up the phone, I noticed the living room was silent. I looked over at the wall. The clock had stopped. Its hands were frozen at 3:17 p.m., the exact time of Mark's accident. I mentioned it to Jenna, and we both thought it was a bizarre coincidence. I took the clock down, checked the battery. It was a modern quartz movement someone had fitted into the old casing and put a fresh one in. The clock started ticking again. 2 weeks later, Jenna's sister called, crying. Her beloved golden retriever, a dog she'd had for 10 years, had collapsed suddenly and passed away from a heart condition no one knew he had. Jenna was devastated. When she got off the phone, she looked at me, her face ashen. She pointed to the wall. "The clock," she whispered. I looked up. It had stopped again. The hands pointed to 11:02 a.m., the time her sister had found the dog. This time, we were genuinely scared. I wanted to smash the thing, but Jenna, influenced by her grandmother's beliefs, was worried it was some kind of omen we shouldn't mess with. She thought getting rid of it might make things worse. So we just left it on the wall, not running. The silence was a relief. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to a sound. It was the clock. It was ticking. I shot out of bed and ran into the living room. The clock was running perfectly, but we hadn't put a battery in it. I ripped it off the wall and looked at the back. The battery compartment was empty. Jenna and I just stared at each other in pure terror. We didn't even speak. I grabbed a hammer from the garage, took the clock outside to the dumpster behind our building, and smashed it to pieces. We watched the garbage truck haul it away the next morning. We never figured out where the clock came from or what it was. Mrs. Davison still sometimes asks, what happened to that blessed clock? We just tell her it's in storage. We don't know if it was a curse or some kind of warning, but we do know one thing. Some gifts are better left unopened.